الآن حنرحب بمتحدثتنا فينيشا بورتر، واللي عندها منصب المقيم الفني في المتحف البريطاني. تتولى مسؤولية الأعمال الفنية الإسلامية والفنون المعاصرة بمنطقة الشرق الأوسط منذ عام 1989. تحمل درجة البكالوريوس في اللغتين العربية والفارسية، ودرجة الماجستير في الفلسفة في الفن الإسلامي من جامعة أوكسفورد. شاركت في كثير من المعارض، واليوم أشرفت على تنظيم معرضين رئيسيين في المتحف البريطاني، وهما كلمة في الفن والحج رحلة إلى قلب الإسلام. اشتغلت مناصب كثير لصارت العرض في مؤسسة البخاري للعالم الإسلامي، والفن المعاصر الذي يشمل البلاط الإسلامي. وكذلك قامت مؤخرا بتنقيح وإعادة نشر سيرة والدتها الذاتية The Porter Scrapbook، وهي تعمل حاليا على إعداد كتاب عن مجموعة الأعمال المتوفرة في المتحف البريطاني التي تحمل تواقيع فنانين من منطقة الشرق الأوسط.
Well, thank you so much, Rima Sultan. It's a great pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you so much, MISC Art Institute and the MISC team for all your help, for your invitation. It's a huge honor for me to be here and to be talking to Ahmed Angawi. It gives me no greater pleasure to be talking with him about the project that we did together, which was the Al-Bukhari Foundation Gallery of the Islamic world. And so we're here together to talk about Mangur, and this is something that Ahmed feels passionately about and has studied for a long time. But first of all, Ahmed, it's so lovely to see you, and please just start and tell us what is Mangur and how did your interest in Mangur start?
Assalamu alaikum. It's a pleasure to be here as well with you, Venetia, and with the MISC team. It's such a pleasure to be talking about this beautiful Saudi craft. My story with Al-Mangur really started the beginning with my father and his love for the traditional architecture, especially in the Hijazi region. So looking at his archive, I really noticed this beautiful element that sits within the Roshan, and it's called Al-Manjur, and this beautiful geometry that have within its making and also within its proportions. From looking at the different typology, different forms, I started really wanting to know everything about it. I love that saying that say, "أعرف شيء عن كل شيء وأعرف كل شيء عن شيء." Know something about everything and know everything about something. So I really wanted to take everything about that and to know the different side, the way it's made. And it really intrigued me a lot in the houses in Jeddah. And people see it as this beautiful set of wood. And if you look here, the way it's interlocking together, we call that بالعربي العاشق والمعشوق, the love and beloved. It's basically a technique of a lap joint. And there's a lot of the woodwork that is done in the region use the same principle for tashiq al-khashab, of joining the wood together. And it was fascinating for me because it separates you from the space, but doesn't completely isolate you from it. And it meant to allow the natural light and air within the space.
So these are some of your early experiments with it, and those ones on the right we're going to talk about more because that's the first stage for the screens. But something I remember you telling me was that you started this interest. You went to the Prince's School for traditional arts in London, and then you came back and you worked with your ustaz here. So tell us a little bit about going to London and studying geometry, which was what started you off there, and about working with your ustaz here.
Yes, I had wonderful time in being in London. Of course, in the Prince's School, I learned so much about the language of geometry. I mean, the Mangur and the Roshan and our tradition, I'm very much familiar with it, being here and being with my father, but I never really look at it in the language of geometry, which is very important that I learned from London. And after analyzing the geometry and how is it made, I really blew my mind because most of the craftsmen in the region have lost the techniques of writing those proportions or drawing them. They mostly, as you know, are taught by verbal from next generation to another. So I took it upon myself to really document and analyze and innovate as much as I can. And with Tahsin, Allah yarham, God bless his soul, I learned so much from him. And the way it's made was an interesting part, because he's one of those craftsmen that really was welcoming of innovation. So even the innovation of tools, the innovation of machinery, and how is it done traditionally by the chisel and hand. And I learned from a couple of people really on this journey, but Tahsin was the most that I interacted with since being in Saudi and being around him.
So Tahsin had worked for all of his life on.
He does many different variations of woodwork, but more specifically on Mangur. And also there's Mustafa Hassan from Egypt. His father and his great-grandfather also had an interaction with him. This has brought us to this important element that the Roshan and Mangur, as you know, exist in many parts of the Middle East. It's a shared, beautiful heritage that you see in Egypt and different parts of the Middle East. But the one that is in Jeddah or Mecca and Medina, it's unique in its proportion, and they're done. And I tried to find the what we call master of the craft, and Sheikh al-Harafiyin fil Najjarin, and I interacted with them. But I haven't really found somebody, unfortunately, alive who really produced this work. So I'm a designer by practice, a product designer, but I took it upon myself to really master the techniques of making. So I wanted to design and make, and I wanted to be a Saudi craftsman who were able to produce and work in this project. And I had the pleasure to work with you in the British Museum to show this craft is not only designed by Saudi, but also designed and made by Saudi. And it's a big part of keeping it alive and revived. And that's a great place that we met there.
Yeah, well, this is where I've met you before, but this is where I was completely blown away by what you had done here, because you showed that using the traditions and the designs and so on, you were creating something completely new. And I remember this exhibition so well, and with the glass in the designs and this kind of glass installation there, and in the rooms behind were all of your drawings. And for me, what was wonderful was that we at the British Museum had just embarked on big new project, which was to rethink and to really come up with schemes for this new gallery, which was going to be in the heart of the British Museum. So this is where the cultures of Islam were going to be right in the heart of the British Museum for the first time. And so we were working with the architects at that time, Stanton Williams, and we needed windows in the gallery, and we knew we needed screens. And what attracted me so much when I saw this exhibition was that you had taken the tradition, but you were doing something completely contemporary with it, and that was actually how our collaboration started. I mean, can you say something about this exhibition as well? This is a very important.
Yes, and this exhibition, it was great. That time when I was really producing this piece of work, I had so much already dissect a lot of the analysis and geometry of it. But I really wanted to show it in a contemporary content, that it shows this beautiful geometrical patterns and the way it's produced and the different technique of showing it. So I took it to express this in paper and in glass. If you saw this picture here, this is all the analysis of this old piece of wood. In front of it, it shows the different transition of its geometry. And I really wanted to have a space in Al-Balad that people can come in. It's open. It's like a mini museum. It's open in the space, so people can come and visit it and really experience what goes behind this craft, and from all the thought process and the design proportions. It happened to be also next to a school that opened in Jeddah in collaboration with the Princess School, and I was the program director here for 3 years. And we taught a lot of students how to produce this craft, and this is a very important part, that this craft now is being taught and revived. And there's a lot of students who I also work with in collaboration of projects to keep the blood of this craft alive all the time. And the concept of living tradition, it have to make content of today. Otherwise, you just be copying and repeating. And I don't think that's unfortunately, that sometimes might harm traditional art or craft. You need to completely breathe now if you call it living tradition, that means that it breathes, it inhales and exhales. So at this point, people have to really absorb who's working on this, and then giving a product, a contemporary object that really fits in today's time, but learning the different techniques of making it.
Sorry. So we're going to look at... Sorry.
Yeah, cut off, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. We're going to look at some of the work of the students a little bit later on, but I want to take us now into the how you brought basically Mangur to London. So this is the new gallery, which we opened in 2018 in October, and I'm just going to show you a few pictures of these screens as they are here, and just another couple. But can you say, so just can you describe the experience really of it? And I mean, it must have been an extraordinary thing to actually conceive of that, and the work with the architects, I know, was quite a complex one, and the way that you fitted the Mangur screens with the windows itself. Can you say something about all of that?
Yes, absolutely. First, it was when you first told me about the project, Indonesia, I had it really, from inside, I was really full of joy. One is, of course, I'm taking something of my heritage and to show it in the British Museum and in the content that, you know, people come and visit and see the most beautiful Islamic art from around the world. And there, the piece of craft that comes from Saudi, it sits there. And looking at the piece itself, the interaction that I had with the architects, we had a lot of dialogue on how can we really put the piece of work on the windows and how that can interact with the architecture, historical building like the British Museum. So we wanted to cut and paste something. We really wanted to innovate something that fits the culture of London, how this can adapt and show the different variations of the Mangur. Looking at the history of the buildings, and especially in this picture, you can see a bit of the sash windows, which is a very simple grid of rectangles behind the Mangur. And I wanted to have an interaction with it. And so I designed a lot of the pieces and the units, if I may say, the opening of lights, that can allow the lights to come in this space. And in the same time, respecting that what was there. From my understanding of traditional art or architecture, always respected the culture that is in and work with it and then evolve and unify the concept of Islamic art. But with different variations of them. So, the team at Stanton Williams and the team of the museum, we had a lot of, even with herb lighting, I remember you were very sensitive about how much light comes to the space, and that was a big challenge. Mangur as an element, Roshan allows lights within the space, but I tried to understand each unit and each shape and calculated the percentage of light that comes within. For example, if you have the octagon shape, it's different than the star shape. It have more 80% of light that comes through. So in the gallery itself, we had to make sure that everything there, the light is controlled, and wherever it comes to the space to show the object, and at the same time give this beautiful aesthetic value to the space. And I really wanted it when I had this. You know, I produced it here, but I really wanted to work with the craftsmen of London and to train and work with them to develop this beautiful screens. And each one of those screens have its own aesthetic and composition. For example, in this image here, it really shows you the different proportions and different variations of them. So, going into the museum, I thought of what people would really experience and the viewers wanted to see from the Islamic section of art. And I thought of people coming in, working always with their mind and hearts. It's the same thing when the craftsman works, he works with his mind and his heart. So a lot of those windows, there's the two opposing windows to one another. I called one of the windows the mind window and then the heart. And also inspired from al-ayah al-Qur'aniyya, from the Quranic verse, قلوب يعقلون بها, and they have hearts and minds, قلوب يعقلون بها. So it's like hearts of minds, if I can translate it right. But it's this communication between how can you really look at the piece of art and look at it with your mind, how to understand this civilization that produced this object, and with your heart, of course, if you believe in the message of it. And then in the right and left, you have the lens, which is both of those two windows sits around the heart window, and each one of them are mirrored to one another, but are different. One of them is inhale, and the other is exhale. As if you're going also in the museum, you're inhaling everything within the space, and then the one closer to the door is the exhale window. And that really came along within this particular gallery, which is the traditional gallery. The contemporary one is, sorry?
No, so I mean, one of the things that was wonderful about it was that in the end each window was different. And I remember when we were discussing the designs, and you turned up one day, and we were sitting, with the director of the British Museum, and we had all your designs all across one table, trying to decide. Do you remember which ones? I mean, you've done so many, and
I was so excited to produce many different designs. I'm almost
so many different designs, and I think what's so special is the way you talk about. It's like a language. So each one of those elements is like a harf, really, isn't it? So and the way that you move around these different elements. Can you say something about some?
I mean,
star shaped and
yeah, we call it sometimes بالعربي حروف المنقور, or the letters of Mangur in English, and that's a beautiful way to really describe, even for the viewer or for a student to learn, that it consists of different many units. And the same thing when you combine letters, you come up with words. And when you combine words, you come up with beautiful sentences. And then, of course, you can say poetry or write a book. And I thought about the Mughal the same thing, because there's so much variations, all this beautiful unit and letters that comes together, but you need to have a harmony of putting them together. Like the same thing if you put the letters to come up with a word that makes sense. So in each one of them, there is this beautiful dialogue that I can see in terms of proportions and how do you all relate to one another, and all of them fall within the grammar of Islamic architecture.
And so here are some details, and then when we go into the second room, there was only one window. I should say that one of the things that was so complete, I'm just going to go back to it quickly, but what has been so lovely since we opened is that because you've got the seats there, people are so often sitting there, and it creates this very beautiful atmosphere with the seats. But I just wanted, so this second gallery is from a different time period, and I remember we discussed how actually as the gallery progresses, you get more towards contemporary art, and in fact on the end wall there is the commission that we made of Idris Khan, 21 Stones, and I remember we discussed how this Mangur actually screen should be different from the others. I see you and I down there, and that's one of the wonderful things. The beauty of it is that when the sun sometimes does shine in England, but when it does, the light coming through the screens is just, the reflections are extraordinary. But when we look in detail at this screen, it's very different from the others, isn't it?
Yes, and this particular one for sure, and within the content of it, as you mentioned, it sits within the contemporary gallery. I really wanted to create something that symbolized the concept of breath and nafas, and its meaning that it's still breathing. This particular craft is still breathing. It happened to be that this particular window in the museum, it didn't have any sash grid. It doesn't have any grid behind it. So I thought a bit loose to really do this composition. If you go to slide number 11, you will see that this work and how it almost showed that it's coming back together. All these units, it's complete from the top side. And also, I was a bit restricted with the amount of light that comes in this specific gallery, and we wanted to have it a bit dim. So on most of the openings in the bottom, I use different units to minimize the use of light. But then on the top, it created this beautiful screen that almost they're coming back to form a shape, or to form a composition there. And this is actually one of the windows that I really admired and looked at, and I wanted to really recreate this feeling in a contemporary content. And I noticed a lot of people who sits there on the chair, especially kids, and that really brought me a lot of joy. That they sit and they point where the star is within this window, and they all talk about the different variations of shape. And they say, "I see a square, I see a star." And also, one of the time when I visited, I saw a school who came also, and they were sketching a lot of the part of the museum, and they were really sketching the Mangur. So that for me myself, it's just a beautiful time to see a next generation of people from a different part of the world really learning something about this craft and this beautiful geometry they see.
I know. I mean, that I have to say, I always think of that one as my screen. Actually, I love them all, but I think of that one is definitely mine. Can you say something about that? I mean, in order to do this project in London, I mean, it was enormous. You know, we had a lot of discussion initially about whether the Mangur screens should be made in Jeddah and shipped to London, and then obviously that wasn't going to work for lots of reasons. But you assembled this incredible team, and this was your studio in Hackney, I think it was. Can you say something about who all these wonderful people were who worked with you?
Okay. I mean, one thing for sure, when we decided, a big part of deciding to do it in London is because the weather condition and where the wood was sit, especially if you would cut the wood and prepare it. So we had to be within the same weather condition where it's going to be installed, especially if it's a pyramid structure. So the weathering of the wood have to be within the same level of it. And the other decision is really I wanted to work with the people of the location I'm going to, and because they are living there and they pass by the museum, maybe their sons will go, and so to have them apart to work in this project, for them it was also a big joy, and for us it's a beautiful exchange that we have this diversity of group. We had people from Saudi, people from different parts, from London, from Mexico, from Argentina, but there are a lot of them living in London. And they are craftsmen, they are carpenters, and the beautiful conversation that happened with this interaction of techniques that worked in, and kind of reminds me also on how the craft in Mecca and having the Hajj and the pilgrims coming in, and this kind of beautiful exchange of goods and knowledge that is still happening, and you have this diversity within unity that sits. But within Hackney, I found this beautiful studio that sits. It's actually a space under those. Railway station. So we have the train coming every 5 or 10 minutes passing through, and it was open. The door was open for people to come and to observe and see what we're doing. And a lot of the people coming in was really asking, "What are you doing? And what is this craft?" And it was a beautiful exhibition, if you may say, of the process of making the work. And I find so much difficulties, of course, in the beginning because the scale of the project, and I work with highly skilled craftsmen as well to get it in, but we had so much obstacle that comes in. But in the end, I really found that I was really crafting and learning the process more and more, and I gave it to time that for me I will practice daily to produce this kind of carving. And by doing that, it's almost the concept of repeating unit that is well known in Islamic art. You can be a maker, but if you keep repeating whatever you make, you become a craftsman. You become crafted at it.
You worked with. Sorry to. So amongst this team were also people you'd worked with at the Prince's School. Wasn't one of them your professors there as well?
Jonathan, yes, Jonathan is there, and also the students. A lot of the alumni and students, they come. I worked with also the ابنكار College of Craft in London. A lot of them are also instructors there, and their students who also came. I worked with an amazing team. A lot of them was full-time, part-time, and we had a great joy. People had also, in the videos you will see there's a lot of process of exchanging techniques of how can we really cut this piece of work in a contemporary time. I even work with Factum in Spain, especially in the contemporary window, using the top end technology to produce this. For really each window, the window of the heart is all almost hand, working it really, and it was the first window we produced. And then we had the long window, which is we almost learned the techniques of producing it. And then the mind window came. We did a lot of jigs and techniques and how we do it. And the contemporary window, which is the breadth window, we get very comfortable to produce. So it was almost like us breathing after delivering and giving the project. But each one of those, I have really documented the whole process. It was a beautiful challenge to find the space myself, to look around, but I was very happy to find it in Hackney with the maker spaces, and I fell in love with this community of makers, community of people coming and working together, and each one can interact with one another.
So there was a community in London, and now there is an amazing community in Jeddah, in Balad. And these couple of pictures are from this Zawiya 97 that has been created, and I think there's a little video that we can show there while we're talking.
Yes.
So what is Zawiya 97?
Well, first, the name Zawiya, as Sabat is saying, it's a direction of the Qibla from Jeddah to Mecca, and that's why it's called 79. If it's in Riyadh or in Medina, it will have a different number name. So in Medina, it's 167, southeast. So it's always a different direction. And initially, I really wanted to come up with a space or a place that inhale and exhale, the same idea of Zawit, تجمع وانتشار, a place that gather and also a place that people can, a point of venture to move forward. I really looked at the districts, and I really intentionally wanted to happen within the old districts, the old towns, the old Medinas, and here in old Jeddah and old Balad, because I was so much in love with that Balad, and I wanted to not only work there, but allow other artists, other creative, other makers to be engaging and working with this. And I had this opportunity within the Jeddah season to launch this. And I really focus not only on a house, I focus also on the alleys, which is usually are neglected. Those alleys are point of process from one place to another. So I found a clustered space, and working with the Ministry of Culture there and the Al-Balad team, we created this space to have visitors. We can have open program workshops, and also assigned workshop for different fields. So we have dyes workshop. We have also the techniques of al-atara, which is the herbalist, and weaving. So each studio was the same with what I noticed in London living in the makerspace. And also, it was very important that I opened it in the old district that used to be spaces for crafts. So Zugag al-Layat, for example, is a space that they used to produce the Layat lane. Al-Atara, Zugag al-Atara is the herbalist who produces a lot of these beautiful perfumes and healing properties. And we wanted to really revive the history of that space. So I thought combining art, design, and craft within that location. We had a lot of guests coming in, even researchers, and now we are working with the artist residency program. International artists wanted to know something on Balad, and you can use the facility of a Zawiya. So the Zawiya really is a space, again, how the message of Islam started from Mecca and spread all over the world, is reconnecting back again. So I hope in the future, inshallah, I wanted to start within the kingdom, and inshallah within outside the Middle East. So we have it in the old district, let's say in Fez or in Egypt, Khan al-Khalili, in different areas. Then you can communicate between the knowledge of goods and craftsmen, and you have some sort of exchange between the different locations.
Well, thank you so much. I don't know if we have time for questions. I think perhaps we've exhausted our time now. But just finally, Ahmed, what is you've talked about so many things. You've brought Mangoor to London. What is like the big ambition now that you'd like to do? You've touched on some of these things, but like the big thing you want to do now?
Alhamdulillah, and there's a lot of the things that I really wanted to do, and I started with it, but I really hope, for our beautiful heritage and craft to find its continuity in the contemporary contents. And I always thought about a school. My father always thought about a school of having it here in Jeddah. A school not only teaching traditional arts, but looking at it as a holistic approach with everything else. And now the concern is about the environment and health. There's a lot of traditional also techniques and learning about how can we eat good food, how can we produce good craft. And it's almost a school of thought that comes in together. How the Bauhaus had a big reflection around the world by having different type of synergy of people. So I hope within this school of knowledge between different sects of practice, and how the traditional arts and traditional craft can be working also with the new contemporary techniques of producing and making and architecture, to have an environment that is holistic in its approach, healing in its direction, especially nowadays, and how it's going to be within the future, combining all this beautiful aesthetic in a space that I hope is the Zawiya.
Well, thank you. And I had the great honor of meeting your father as well. And what an inspiration he must be. And I'm sure that you will succeed with these amazing projects. It's been such a pleasure, Ahmed, working with you. And I'm hoping that in the future we'll have some other project to work on again. So thank you. And thank you so much, MISC Art Institute and all of the colleagues who have helped put this together. And I think we just thank you all and wish you a good evening and ma'asalama, and thank you so much.
Pleasure meeting you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you all.
Thank you all very much.